say that Draco Meteor would be a problem because you have that unaware that works the same way with the drops, but this Raging Bolt does not have that. It's going to be the Dragon Pulse, so it's not going to be losing any special attack boosts that it gets from the Calm Mind. If we enter into this first game of our top 8 set, it's going to be the Raging Bolt and Rillaboom here for Paul, and the Dondozo Incineroar combo for Frederik.
Yeah, and that was me saying that I thought there was only 2 main strategies, and I wasn't expecting Incineroar with the Dondozo, because you've got to assume that there's the Tatsugiri waiting in the back, and then what would the final Pokemon be? Maybe the Cresselia, and then Incineroar could be the Trick Room Sweeper, but yeah, quite a unique combination to lead out here against the Rillaboom and Raging Bolt, which of course will be pretty strong against this Dondozo. You've got the Fake Out advantage on your side of the field, and you can pretty easily go for that Calm Mind.
I don't mind having the Ogerpon Wellspring in the back either, though, if you decide to leave the Cresselia and the Ursaluna at home, just because you know that Paul does have a Hearthlim Ogerpon at his disposal. And as we see a sneak peek there, I think we'll get a chance to see how Frederik actually wants to try to navigate through this game. It's the Incineroar at the beginning, but it's the Rillaboom to actually retreat first in favor of the Flutter Mane here for Paul. So there is going to be a pretty significant speed advantage, even though this Dondozo is going to get a commander boost, because this Flutter Mane has that booster energy that it can activate. It's going to get a nice speed boost to help outspeed the +2 Dondozo.
Yeah, so that's going to be very, very nice for that Flutter Mane, given that the Tatsugiri is immediately switching in for that Incineroar to get those boosts going. We'll have to see if there's going to be the Terrestrialization on the Raging Bolt to keep itself safe from an order up, because there was no Fake Out that happens. The Rillaboom did just immediately switch into the Flutter Mane. There's no Fake Out at all because the Incineroar switched as well. So I think the Terra Fairy would probably be the safest thing to go for, but
there's none.
Pulled it. There was none, and it was an order up.
Wow, so the order up is going to chunk this Raging Bolt significantly and also give this Dondozo an attack boost. Maybe Paul thinking that there were a couple of things you have to think about. Is the Dondozo actually going to attack you with the order up, or would you have to be wary of something like the Wave Crash that if you had Terrestrialize would be doing neutral damage to you instead and still going to hit you like a truck? Paul gets away with a Calm Mind boost, but he's going to need to get a couple of turns of recovery to make this a bit more manageable.
Yeah, well, you've at least got the Thunder Wave potential coming out from the Flutter Mane, and that should allow the Raging Bolt to be able to outspeed Dondozo. Even with no speed investment, it's able to outspeed Dondozo that's completely invested into its speed. So I think that's probably the saving grace here, given that the momentum seemed to go with Frederik on that turn, going for that order up, getting the attack boost, and not falling foul of a potential Terra Fairy. Of course, now you can go for the Wave Crash pretty safely, and either Pokemon should be KO'd if it does break through this paralysis.
Yeah, the paralysis is going to be a mighty beast battle. But for now, it is going to be the Dragon Pulse from the Raging Bolt. Reminder, it is going to be at +1, but there are a couple of boosts to this Dondozo to keep it nice and healthy. Unfortunately, doesn't get a chance to attack on this turn because that paralysis already pays off.
Yeah, and now we're going to see the benefit of the leftovers here, because now the Raging Bolt is pretty healthy, and it will be quite close if it does go for a Terra Fairy, if it survives the Wave Crash or not. And whether the fact that you're going to be able to potentially KO the Dondozo with a Moonblast and Dragon Pulse, I would suspect it's able to survive, given that Flutter Manes with a booster energy are usually not trained too much in special attack. But a combination of Moonblast, Dragon Pulse, and then something else would be able to pick up the KO on the Dondozo. So I reckon it's only got one more potential attack left in it, whether that's going to be the order up into the Raging Bolt once again, just in case it does not go for that Terra Fairy, or if it's the Wave Crash into either Pokemon, either calling the Terra Fairy on the Raging Bolt, or just wanted to get rid of that supports capability of the Flutter Mane.
And then you have the Rillaboom to come back in and hit it with a priority Grassy Glide. There are definitely a couple of ways that you can get through the rest of this turn, but there is a Terrestrialization committed onto the Dondozo, so it does take the Terra Grass. What this is going to do is help out a little bit against the Raging Bolt's electric type attacks. But when it comes down to the Flutter Mane, it's still going to be taking quite a bit of damage there from the Moonblast. Raging Bolt decides, I don't think I want to commit the Terra, so I'm going to protect myself instead. And the Moonblast does take this Dondozo to below half. And even better, Paul actually does get the Wave Crash into the protect of the Raging Bolt. But I don't know if Paul wanted that. Maybe he did actually want to have something to switch in freely there.
I think what he's gone for there is that the extra damage into the Dondozo surely at this point allows the Moonblast and Dragon Pulse to be able to KO the Dondozo. I don't think it would have done if it was unaware, but the Calm Mind is going to be a factor in the damage, and we've already seen it be able to do, what, close to a third of the damage available, and now you don't need to go for the Thunderclap. I think that's what Frederik was expecting there. Thunderclap and Moonblast would have been able to pick up the knockout on that Dondozo, and it can't even protect itself to get recovery here.
So that is going to be a moot turn here for the Dondozo. Another Moonblast is going to take it down quite low. And the Raging Bolt with a Dragon Pulse to follow up will be enough to secure the knockout. So that is one Pokemon down. This Tatsugiri pops back out, and there are a couple of options here now for Frederik to bring a Pokemon beside it.
Yeah, at least the nice thing for Frederik there is that the Moonblast wasn't able to pick up the knockout on the Dondozo, and the Dragon Pulse therefore didn't go into the Tatsugiri. It would have been disastrous if that Dondozo had survived the Dragon Pulse, because then that is Moonblast KO, and Tatsugiri is also for sure KO'd. So there is still at least 3 Pokemon available on Frederik's side of the field, and you've got the Ogerpon here to start potentially going on the offense into that Flutter Mane. But the Raging Bolt, the leftovers over the booster energy this time, have been incredibly useful paired with that Grassy Terrain, because look, it took over half damage, and it's almost back to full HP.
It is, and I think that's going to be too difficult for the Ogerpon and the Tatsugiri to get through. And I love the patience Paul has had to not utilize Terrestrialization yet in this game. He still gets to keep that natural typing to be stronger against this Ogerpon, and you can always take an opportunity to protect here so you can get a Thunder Wave down onto either of these Pokemon. But for now, it's just a protect from the Flutter Mane.
Yeah, and a tech from the Tatsugiri as well. It's just going to be a double protect coming out from Paul to maybe get some extra recovery. It does seem to be. So protects all around here. The Ogerpon's going to attack into nothing, but that's going to benefit Paul a lot more, because now you can go for an Icy Wind and a Dragon Pulse into this Tatsugiri, and the only way to stop that would be a Follow Me, but then you could also just go for the Terra Fairy as well, and then the Tatsugiri is just really not threatening anything.
Yeah, and I think it's just starting to really get away from Frederik at this point. Grassy Terrain is gone, so there is a little bit less healing available for this Raging Bolt. It can only rely on the leftovers at this time. But with Ogerpon using Follow Me, I think this is where we're really going to start to see some KOs. Ogerpon is going to redirect away the attention of an attack from the Raging Bolt, but for now the Icy Wind is able to connect on both the Ogerpon as well as the Tatsugiri. The speed drop being so pivotal to allow this Raging Bolt to get the outspeed on the Ogerpon as well as the Tatsugiri. It doesn't actually get the full KO here, but the Draco Meteor from the Tatsugiri isn't enough to knock out the Raging Bolt either. That is the power of all of that recovery over this game.
Yeah, and having the Calm Mind boost is not just for offense, it's for defense as well. I think they would have just about survived the Draco Meteor without the Calm Mind special defense boost, but that allowed it to be so incredibly comfortable. And yeah, now you've got the Icy Wind onto both of these Pokemon. If you're confident the Raging Bolt outspeeds the Tatsugiri and you only need the tiniest amount of speed investment in your Raging Bolt to guarantee that, then you can easily just go for Moonblast, pick up the KO on the Ogerpon, go for Dragon Pulse KO on the Tatsugiri. However, if you run as slow as possible and just invest completely in bulk or the Raging Bolt, then that wouldn't be guaranteed that you would outspeed the Tatsugiri, but it's a reasonable assumption that you would be able to do that. So I think the momentum is just so far in Paul's favor at the moment.
It is, because this Voldermane is still going to be the fastest Pokemon on the field. Quick KO from the Moonblast. The Raging Bolt is able to follow that up nicely with the Dragon Pulse, and with this Tatsugiri having to take the brunt force of that, it's Frederik down to just the Incineroar, and I think he's got to be thinking about game number 2. Does he continue to rely on this Dondozo Tatsugiri pair, or does he try to switch it up and bring in the Cresselia and Ursaluna?
Well, we need to keep in mind it did get paralyzed when it did try to go for some offense. But then Paul was able to get the right plays, get the out positioning going, and we did get confirmation at least that the Dragon Pulse did the Raging Bolt did outspeed the Tatsugiri when it was put to that -1. And of course, Incineroar's not going to be able to win before this. Frederik's going to throw in the towel.
First game goes to Paul Chua, our EUIC champion from 2023, hoping to make the comeback, get to another finalist position after falling short in Toronto in second place just a couple of weeks ago. And now he is hoping to get another game win to accomplish that.
Yeah, and the play that he was going for, I think the best thing to make a note of is he wasn't terroring. And there were multiple Dragon moves going into the Raging Bolt, and Paul just didn't care. It was absolutely fine. But the order up was going to be a 2-shot into that Raging Bolt, but it didn't even need to go for the Terra Fairy, it seems like. It took a Draco Meteor and an order up, and it was able to do that because of the leftovers of the item choice on it. So very, very nicely done there for the Raging Bolts.
And there were no KOs taken there by Frederik, so I think that was why we saw Paul be so comfortable. A couple of times over the course of our broadcast, we have seen players opt to utilize this Raging Bolt's defenses as an HP resource. And so even if you are going to have this Pokemon take a lot of damage, Paul still had an unrevealed Pokemon in the back that maybe he was perfectly fine letting the Raging Bolt go down.
Yeah, it seems comfortable enough for sure. And I think we probably need to see Frederik switch up to at least the Ursaluna somewhere mode, because the Raging Bolt was by far the biggest issue for that game. Yes, the Flutter Mane was necessary to be able to get the Thunder Waves to allow the speed control happening, the Icy Winds and the Thunder Wave into the Dondozo, but the Raging Bolt it didn't care about the Dragon moves. It's got to care about the ground moves, though.
It does, but the one thing that I have hesitations about for the Ursaluna is the fact that it only has Facade and Earthquake. And because there's a Rillaboom on the other side, and you've got double Grassy Glide pressure from the Ogerpon Hearthflame as well as the Rillaboom, I mean, the grassy terrain is just going to quarter all of the damage that Earthquake would take. So I don't know whether or not we will end up seeing it, but we do see the Cresselia. So I have a sneaking suspicion that you're right. We do have that Ursaluna waiting in the back here for Frederik as we enter this game too.
Yeah, I would be incredibly surprised to see Frederik bring Cresselia without that Ursaluna waiting in the back. So is this just going to be a U-turn straight away? Because that's the most preferable thing that the Incineroar can go for when it's Trick Room. Fake out Trick Room doesn't give you the momentum that you want. You want to be able to pivot out into that Ursaluna, and as the Trick Room is set, you get that burn going. Because otherwise you need to spend that turn U-turning in Trick Room and just having no offensive pressure. But then there's the Incineroar on Paul's side of the field that could put a stop to that. If there's a U-turn coming out from Incineroar on Frederik's side of the field, you could go for fake out into the Incineroar, and then U-turn can't happen. So then maybe do you consider the hard switch into the Ursaluna if you're going for Trick Room, but then at the same time, if Cresselia is faked out, then that won't work either. So I think it's just somewhat of an awkward position for Frederik here. You could probably guarantee the Trick Room in some way, but will you be able to do it with your Ursaluna to make use of it?
Well, it is a fake out into the Raging Bolt. So Raging Bolt on Chua's side is not going to get to do any damage. But he does get a nice pivot out thanks to that parting shot. Drops the special attack of this Cresselia. Not going to be a huge factor in this game just because Cresselia is not the biggest offensive threat. But you get the Rillaboom in at quite the right time. Now you can see the grassy terrain not only helping to make sure that this Raging Bolt is going to maintain full HP at the end of this turn, but also Earthquake is not going to be super effective. This Raging Bolt has a nice cushion to play around with.
Yeah, you probably need to be relying on the Facades, and that's still perfectly fine. Facade is one of the strongest attacks that we have in the game, but Raging Bolt is one of the Pokemon that is able to take Facade from full HP, and especially with Incineroar now pivoting straight out, you'll be able to intimidate the Ursaluna whenever you want. Maybe you consider switching the Incineroar straight away for the Rillaboom, because then if you get take a Flare Blitz on the way in, then the Rillaboom doesn't want to take that. Incineroar absolutely would. But if you go for a fake out into the Incineroar with the Rillaboom, and there's a hard switch into the Ursaluna, then it potentially gets in for free.
It's just a tough call, because I feel like you don't want to take that risk with the Ursaluna taking free damage.
Oh,
but you
no
also might not be able to get enough done. Oh, the fake out doesn't happen. It's just going to take this Flare Blitz with the helping hand, but it lives anyway. Raging Bolt doesn't take any damage on this turn. Gets to set up the Calm Mind, and that's where things can really start to get out of hand with this Pokemon.
Yeah, well, the Rillaboom's going to KO itself at least. That's a lot of damage into the Cresselia, though. But yeah, the Flare Blitz, the Intimidate from the Incineroar on that turn 1 was crucial there to allow that Rillaboom to survive. The Helping Hand effectively cancelling out the Intimidate, and Rillaboom can survive a Flare Blitz regularly. So very, very nicely trained there for the Rillaboom. But now here comes the Incineroar. So now the Ursaluna is still not on the field. If it is able to pivot in, it won't have to worry about that Intimidate.
And you also know that the grassy terrain is on a timer. Since that Rillaboom has been taken out of commission, you only have a couple of turns left before you're free and clear. And you just gotta hope that that Hearthflame Ogerpon is not in the back.
Yeah, well, as we can see, it is unfortunately in the back to be able to get that support going. So at least you've got fake out pressure to be able to stop a U-turn from the Incineroar, but at the same time, is there going to be the hard swap available for Frederik? The Raging Bolt is set up with a Calm Mind at least, so now the Dragon Pulses are going to start doing some very noticeable damage. I would expect the Cresselia to still be able to survive, because again, it's an incredibly bulky Pokemon, but if you don't go for the, well, if you do go for the Cresselia, at least I think that's preferable now, because it did end up switching out.
Cresselia is going to... I like this play from Frederik because it just allows you to keep the Cresselia to set up another Trick Room, because I think that's what Frederik needs to play for at this point. You wait for the grassy terrain to expire, you get yourself back into a position where you can bring the Cresselia out and actually set up another Trick Room, but also you have given yourself the potential of bringing the Ursaluna and at least getting able to take one. But Frederik is going to have to take this Dragon Pulse on the switch in, and that is going to do a lot. And so even though you do have one more turn of Trick Room to play around with, and your Guts is activated because you got a chance to pivot it in on this turn, it's not easy.
Yeah, but you've got the Incineroar on the field at the moment. You can't go for an Intimidate into that Ursaluna. I guess you can go for a Parting Shot, but since we're in Trick Room, the Ursaluna should be able to underspeed both of these Pokemon and launch off a Facade. You can't go for Earthquake because the grassy terrain is still on the field, so it has to be Facade, and that is potentially a saving grace here for Paul, because both of these Pokemon have the potential to be able to survive the Facade from full HP. Raging Volt should, Incineroar might, and usually relies on the Intimidate to be able to survive that. But then if the Raging Bolt does survive, it can respond back with a Dragon Pulse KO. And that might mean the Ogerpon needs to be going for that redirection, but if it doesn't, then it can't pick up that last little bit of damage on that Raging Bolt that might survive the Facade. And the Incineroar definitely will if it's going for the Terra Ghost here.
Terra Ghost is going to make sure that that Facade cannot touch it. The immunity, very important. But Ursaluna goes after the Raging Bolt instead. It just barely isn't enough to actually secure the knockout onto the Raging Bolt, as Incineroar is free and clear to go for a Parting Shot. Thank you, Trick Room, for giving Incineroar this wonderful opportunity. And Paul is going to reveal the 4th Pokemon that he has brought to this first game.
Yeah, and the Incineroar going to be in the back for Fake Out Pressure. It does make sense that it's Flutter Mane because that is still respecting the Dondozo mode, because Flutter Mane, I think, is necessary to be able to deal with that if that was brought to the game. Of course, we're still in Trick Room, so that Speed Boost is not going to help. But here is the Dragon Pulse into the Ursaluna. There was no Follow Me, so the Ursaluna is KO'd.
But there is a follow-up attack from this Ogerpon that can still contribute to this fight.
Oh, but
it's going to be the Ivy Cudgel, and the Flutter Mane tanks that like a champ.
Wow, the Raging Bolt got away with it. That could have been an Ivy Cudgel, and that should have been able to KO the Raging Bolt, given that it was down into the red. And now we've got the Leftovers recovery with the grassy terrain once again. And now there's not going to be too much damage available into this Raging Bolt. Incineroar's going to be your best attacker that's susceptible to Intimidate. So now this Raging Bolt, even though it's at reasonably low HP, is in a very, very strong position because it walls the Ogerpon very nicely. The Incineroar can knock off the Leftovers, but with an Intimidate, the Raging Bolt should be able to survive that. You could even just go for a pivot out into your Incineroar, get the Intimidate and protect, get the guaranteed recovery. You could maybe protect, potentially sacrifice the Flutter Mane just to guarantee you've got that recovery, and then you've got Fake Out Pressure into the Incineroar, and then a follow-up Dragon Pulse. And if you get 2 Dragon Pulses into the Incineroar, I don't think there would be enough damage to break through the Raging Bolt afterwards.
Yeah, the Raging Bolt definitely needs some recovery, though, this turn. And so I also wouldn't surprise me too much to see Paul just go for a Protect on both the Flutter and the Raging Bolt, given that there is one more turn of Trick Room left. Flutter Mane would definitely be able to take advantage of that, but instead, Paul says, I think my Flutter Mane is going to be naturally faster than you, even without this booster energy. So he's going to give it back up. Incineroar now comes in to take its place, getting those Intimidate drops onto both of these physical attackers for Frederik, and it is just the Protect from the Raging Bolt. So I think this is going to work out beautifully here for Paul. Now, what did Frederik do, though? I mean, Knockoff is still pretty good. It's going to do that super effective damage. Knock off the Citrus Berry so that this Incineroar cannot actually get the rest of that recovery, but the Horn Leech is just not effective enough.
Yeah, it's going to get the tiny bits of a recovery, and then maybe it can survive 2 Dragon Pulses, factoring in some potential recovery from this grassy terrain. But it's very, very nice call there. I think that had to be the play that Frederik made to keep him in this game. If that was not a double up into the Incineroar, it would have been too healthy. Paul would have been able to outposition Frederik. But now, we're in the outside of the Trick Room now. The Raging Bolt should outspeed the Incineroar, but the Ogerpon has now become the fastest thing on the field without the Flutter Mane. And it's gone back to full HP thanks to that grassy terrain and the Horn Leech. With the Intimidate from the Incineroar, it's probably going to survive an Ivy Cudgel. And of course, you've got Fake Out Pressure available on Paul's side of the field. The Ogerpon is not threatening the Raging Bolt in the slightest. It has to be the Incineroar. Like Moonblast, even from Cresselia, is not going to do it because of the Calm Mind. So it has to be the Incineroar. Are you able to protect it well enough on Frederik's side of the field?
I think it's tough because you have to probably bring in the Cresselia and sacrifice it if that is what you want to do. Or what I see is Paul can just use this Incineroar, go for Fake Out into Frederik's Incineroar, like what is being done, and then Ogerpon can follow that up with the Ivy Cudgel. It is just still only tickling this thing because of those defenses investment. Dragon Pulse, it looks like it should be able to do one more hit and then be able to get that knockout, but all the while, this Raging Bolt is continuing to just recover back up.
Yeah, I think you might need to consider going for the Follow Me and then the knockoff into the Raging Bolt just to get rid of the Leftovers recovery, because the grassy terrain's gone. If the Leftovers disappear from the Raging Bolt, then that is a permanent removal, and it won't be able to have access to recover anymore, and it'll be stuck with the amount of HP it's at, and then maybe the Cresselia will be able to break through. But then I think the Cresselia's it's pretty close if it's in range of just regular old Dragon Pulse as well. And if you don't go for the Follow Me, the Dragon Pulse is surely going to be able to pick up the knockout on the Incineroar based on the amount of damage it did previously. But then if you're going for the Follow Me, then you're not KOing the Incineroar. You're probably not even KOing the Incineroar based on the previous damage of Ivy Cut. There's no Follow Me here.
No, but if it crits, it could be a knockout, and there it is! The Incineroar goes down for Paul, and now it is going to be on this Raging Bolt. Fluttermane does get to come back in on the next turn, and Raging Bolt still gets a chance to actually attack here. So the Dragon Pulse has to KO the Incineroar on the other side on this turn. So both Incineroars down for the count as we enter into the next round. Ogerpon, Wellspring, and this Cresselia for Frederik versus the Raging Bolt and the Fluttermane for Paul.
Surely the Raging Bolt has got this, right? Even though there's a super effective Moonblast from Cresselia, you don't invest anything into its special attack when it's this full supportive set. So even though it's super effective, it'll do like 10%. It's no damage at all. And then the Ogerpon is completely resisted. Like, yeah, you can KO the Fluttermane most likely with an Ivy Cudgel, and maybe, actually, I think it'll probably be able to survive thanks to the Intimidates previously. So I don't think there's too much stopping just Moonblast and Dragon Pulse into the Cresselia here to be able to pick up that KO. Well, I guess the only thing stopping it would be a Terra Fairy coming out from the Cresselia, potentially. And then it might actually be, that might actually be able to 1v1, because then you can't Thunderclap. So that's something to consider here.
It is going to be a tough call, but I do think that just the Terra Fairy feels like the right thing in the moment to be able to deal with the Raging Bolt. But you got to deal with the Ogerpon first, I think. Paul knows that you got to get rid of the HP that is still so healthy for this Ogerpon as we see the Terra Fairy invested into the Cresselia. This Raging Bolt does have that special defense boost from the Calm Mind that is received at the very beginning of this game. As we see the Fluttermane go for the Protect, now it's up to this Ogerpon to see what's going to happen. And it's just going to be a spiky shield to kind of call that damage that's going to be coming through from the Raging Bolt. But with this Lunar Blessing, I mean, this is where I feel like things really do start to get a bit dangerous. Can the Cresselia utilize its bulk to actually start to get away with things? But on a turn that looks so neutral, Paul is going to take advantage of it being a very calm turn. Get another Calm Mind boost.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, maybe with the Terra Fairy, the Cresselia can do something, because you might be able to knock out the Fluttermane with a combination of the Terra Fairy boosted Moonblast and Ivy Cudgel, and depending on the training on the Fluttermane, it'll be very close if that's the case. But now that you've got the second Calm Mind available on the Raging Bolt, you should be able to, for sure, knock out this Ogerpon with 2 Dragon Pulses. That might force the Cresselia into Lunar Blessings instead, so that the Dragon Pulse would not be a 2-shot. But then if you're going for the Lunar Blessing, you're not going for the Moonblast to potentially get that extra chip damage that might be necessary into that Fluttermane, given how much damage we've been seeing this Ogerpon not do because of the Intimidates.
Well, the Thunderclap goes first into the Ogerpon, and it brings it down so low. If Fluttermane can follow it up with a Moonblast, then this Ogerpon is out. And Frederik has to hope that this Cresselia can hang on. But with this Pokemon being so limited on its special attack output, it might be really hard. Moonblast is a crit, so it might take another one. It actually might be a 3-hit knockout, though, depending on that damage. But I'm not about to do that math on stream. Paul has 2 Pokemon to this one of the Cresselia, but you know Frederik is going to try his best to keep himself in this.
Yeah, this is an incredibly awkward endgame now, because if you are able to KO this Fluttermane before the Cresselia gets KO'd itself, then we're kind of in a stalemate, because then you're never going to go for Moonblast into the Raging Bolt, because then you would become Thunderclappable. But then you're going to allow this Raging Bolt to just recover all its HP with its leftovers.
Well, but they call the Thunderclap, though, because there is a limited amount of power points available for utilizing the Thunderclap. It's not going to be enough, though, to actually pick up the knockout. So you got to hope that this Moonblast is going to be able to bring you down. And so it is a 1v1 between the Raging Bolt and the Cresselia. But now this is where we do have to keep track of how many Thunderclaps are actually left. Can you go for Lunar Blessing and actually get yourself out of this red zone? But it's going to take quite a few, and you also have to start thinking about how much time is actually left in this game. There's no other way for this Raging Bolt to hit you as a fairy type with that terrestrialization, but you don't really have a choice here if you're Paul to get these calls correct about the Lunar Blessings and try to use your Calm Mind so you are not dipping into your power points of the Thunderclap.
Yeah, I don't see how this game's not going to come down to time. Surely Frederik will never go for the Moonblast when there is the potential of that Thunderclap, at least on these first few turns. turns. And even if you go for the Moonblast, it's +3 special defense on the Raging Bolt. It won't do any damage. You needed the critical hit to be able to do the tiniest bit extra damage to that Fluttermane in the first place. And yeah, you can see the Lunar Blessing is happening because, of course, there's not going to be a Thunderclap. Paul's almost certainly going to take these extra turns to get to at least +5 while the Cresselia tries to get back to full HP, and I'm sure it's going to be able to get to +6 before the end of this game.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is going to be timer, and I'm getting my hands ready to count the number of Thunderclaps left that we might have. 8 power points available for Thunderclap if Paul has fully maximized the amount of power points that this can have. We've seen 2 Thunderclaps already, one into the Ogerpon and one into the Cresselia. And so with only 47 seconds left of
I don't think
time.
Frederik's noticed. He's running out of time here.
Yeah, he can't just fully,
he's thinking too much. He's not realizing. Like, he will lose this game if he runs out of your time. And we still got way enough time left in this game for it to be able to come down to the actual 20-minute timer. He needs to start clicking Lunar Blessing as quickly as he can, and I don't think he's realized it yet.
I think he's, well, I really hope so, because, yeah, you got to start clicking these moves quite fast. I don't even think a crit is going to be able to get you there. Paul is at a point where his Raging Bolt is back up to almost full HP, and even though this Cresselia is also going to be a super healthy, I think another Thunderclap at +5 is going to be too much to handle. 36 seconds left for this move time, but 25 seconds left of your time, and Raging Bolt is just going to go for a Protect. Paul knows that the timer is ticking down, and he's just got to wait for the final moment to strike.
I mean, Paul's never going to lose on your time. He's the fastest clicker in the game. He thinks up for about 5 seconds per turn to be able to work out what he wants to do. But yeah, Frederik is down to 24 seconds now. It's not going to be able to do it. I think you need to just start going on the offensive and try and get those critical hits, because at this point, surely, because we haven't had that notification of 3 minutes remaining, it's got to be your time that's going to run out first for Frederik.
Yeah, so Frederik is using the animations now to think about what the next move is going to be. He saw the Thunderclap fail there from the Raging Bolt because he decided to go for the Trick Room. He has the option to go for a couple more Lunar Blessings, but he is running out of that. He can use the Trick Room again to continue to reverse the tides, but that's the 4th Thunderclap here for Paul being utilized and failing again because the Cresselia went for the Trick Room. These turns are going to lock in really fast from here on out.
Yeah, come on, frame perfect inputs, Frederik. You got to go for it. Look how fast he's going for it now. He's realized that his your time is incredibly low at this point. We'll have to see. Like, I haven't kept track how long it's been in the game. It's got to be closing in on the 3 minutes remaining, though, right?
I believe so, but Cresselia is going to go for another Trick Room to try to keep Frederik in this. So we decide things at the end of the game timer. If the your time doesn't expire first, with there's 16 seconds left, Raging Bull is just going to go for the Dragon Pulse, so it doesn't utilize those precious power points for the Thunderclap. There's only half remaining as the Twisted Dimensions return, and Frederik is going to utilize every single Trick Room he possibly can, and there's the timer. Okay. All right, so we're coming down to the wire.
Can he survive through his own almost non-existent your time to be able to make it through 3 minutes? I don't know. We're almost running out of the Trick Room turns. Yeah, he's going for the Thunderclap now that we're in the last few minutes remaining. Oh, I don't know. The timings are going to be so awkward here.
It feels like it's 2 seconds for every input that Frederik is going for, but Paul is going to just have to consider maybe continuing to going for things like Protect, like for Calm Mind. He knows he has to cycle through those things because he only got a couple of Thunderclaps left. Cresselia is going to keep going for those Trick Rooms, and we're going to see the flash of the your time that is going to be left. Remember, if Paul wins this game, he moves on to top 4, and Frederik is going to go home in top 8 of the Europe International Championships. So you got to click these moves correctly.
Yeah, and it seems like Paul is now timer stalling because he's no longer inputting his moves incredibly quickly. I think he's got enough Thunderclaps that he can afford to do this. Maybe he hasn't realized how low the your time is on Frederik's side of the field, but yeah, now he is for sure timer stalling. We've got less than 2 minutes now, and if Paul is able to, and I'm sure he has enough time to be able to stall all 45 seconds given how quickly he ends up clicking.
He is really biding his time.
Yep.
Because every single second is going to matter. Cresselia doesn't even try to go for an attack here because Frederik knows a Thunderclap is coming. There's only a couple left now as Paul is looking at the final couple minutes of this game. It might even just be 80 seconds remaining as you see the red for the number of moves that Frederik actually has left.
It's so stressful. You don't ever want to see that color come up on your time. Oh, it's so close here. But of course, Paul, he's been able to preserve enough of his yaw time that he can afford to go for this timer stall. And I reckon that there's going to be 2 turns maximum left in this game. I think that it's going to be enough that this turn will happen, and maybe there's not 45 seconds left, because of course, if there's less than 45 seconds and Paul has 45 seconds available of his yaw time, he can stall out the entirety of the rest of the game.
60 seconds left, and we're going to see this timer start to count down, and the move animations are going to take away from this. And so here we go, Cresselia using the helping hand. We do have another Thunderclap remaining, and that is going to be wasted as we see the timer continue to tick down. There's less than 45 seconds left. Frederik just has to actually put something into the input as he goes for another helping hand.
He might have moonblasted himself, actually. Was it helping? I think it was helping hand.
It was helping hand.
It was helping hand.
Helping hand. So if Paul decides to click the Thunderclap, it goes down to how much HP is remaining based on the total.
Yeah, they're at full HP. This is just like the percentage across the entirety of your team, and we can't tell who it's going to be, given that they're both at full HP. There's an Incineroar on both. Ogerpon is less bulky than the Rillaboom, but Fluttermane's incredibly unbulky, right? So surely the percentage is on Paul.
It kind of balances out. You would think so, but we don't know until the battle has actually ended. With 3 seconds remaining, Cresselia goes for the helping hand, and we're going to see this Raging Bolt.
It's got to be Paul with the Fluttermane's low HP, right?
But let's see. Come on. Oh, we still have one more input remaining. It's going to be a Moonblast, but the battle is over because the time has run out.
Yeah, that's it. Paul
Chua wins!
Wow! Able to take it on timer of all things and advance here over Frederik Nielsen into the top 4.
What a crazy end of that game, even though it did come down to the final